You know him, you love him. He's the editorial editor of the Colorado Springs Gazette. Our good friend Wade Laugesen. Thanks for coming all the way up here. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Wanted to ask you about your new mayor, because you got a new mayor. And the reason I care is he used to be our AG. What's the story?
Yeah, he was rather soundly elected in
That's all that Gazette editorial. You know, you're the kingmaker.
When
of
we
these
say
things.
vote for someone, people do what we say.
Just like
Apparently,
that, yeah.
No, he won almost 80% of the vote, and against a formidable candidate, former mayor Mary Lou Makepeace, who's very popular, and it was a crowded field, so. There was a runoff election between those two, and 78-point-something% victory on his part.
This is when she was mayor, it was a weaker form of your mayorship.
That's right.
You were kind of part of the council. It doesn't have as much power. Now there's what's known as a strong form mayor, kind of like what's in Denver. And what are you expecting from the former AG? Why the hell would he want to be mayor? He was attorney general. He could go into private practice. He could make some real cash.
I've asked him that many times, as have many people, to the point I'm sure he's sick of the question. Why didn't you run for governor? He polled very well in a race if he were to run against Hickenlooper.
Right.
And his standard answer to that is, Jon Hickenlooper has long been a client of mine, and I'm not going to run against a client. I'm too good of a lawyer to do that. So I can't run for governor at this point, and I love my hometown of Colorado Springs, and I want to be the mayor. It's a dream job of his that he's had for a long time.
It's interesting that Jon Caldara puts it that way, because I think it's part of the criticism I might have of the great job he did as AG, which is Jon Hickenlooper isn't the client. I understand that you're the kind of the state's lawyer, but sometimes I wonder if the AG's office looks at the apparatus, the bureaucracy of government, and go, that's our client, rather than all the people of Colorado. That's our client.
Well,
and
sure,
so I see, not just in Colorado, but in a lot of states, the client relationship is of the governmental bureaucracy, and that's not what we elected any AG for.
Right, and he does represent, you're right, he represents the people, and that's been very clear in the way he served as AG. He had to defend, and defended very well, some things he doesn't necessarily agree with, such as Amendment 64. And that was the people of Colorado making a decision that he then defended, and he defended it well. But when you're talking about the governor's office, you're talking about an entire branch of office, the executive branch of government, that is occupied by one person. So it's a little bit difficult to make that.
AG stands for aspiring governor. His job was to run for governor. We'd have a Republican governor. So work on him next time.
I think he would have been a strong candidate. I actually think that things might have gone his way if he had run.
Could have been. So. I want to talk a little bit about divisiveness in the Republican ranks, which is our problem. I mean, as a Republican leading libertarian, I look at the Republican Party and I go, what a dysfunctional mess. And it's always been a dysfunctional mess.
Yeah.
And I want to talk a little bit about the dysfunctional mess that you've seen and you've written on.
Well, it's a little more dysfunctional than I think I've ever seen it in my adult life. Yes.
How so?
Because, well, we have so many divisions within the Republican Party and the right side of the political spectrum that are sort of freelancing. And they're
freelancing. I like
and you don't see this on the left. You don't see it on the left because, and I don't think you will so much. The left likes government. The left likes their side of the government machine to win. And
in order to win, you must work together.
They work together.
You must work incrementally. You've got to get things done.
Right, and they'll work with people they aren't necessarily bought into entirely. But if you're somewhat left of center and you have a D next to your name, you're part of the brand, and we'll take it.
The unions will work with the anti-energy greenies, even though they disagree on so much, because they both know that if a D wins in the fall,
exactly,
we all get richer.
Whereas on the right side of the political spectrum, we have a whole bunch of people who really aren't bought into government. They don't believe in it to the extent that the left does. And that's probably a healthy thing in a lot of ways, but it also doesn't lead to that same sort of dynamic where people are working together for incremental victories and compromises and taking what they can get, even though Ronald Reagan told them long ago that that's how it's done, and he said so very eloquently. You take what you can get. today, knowing you're going to come back for another bite at the apple later. Nobody listens to that anymore. So the freelancers are out there, and oftentimes it's just as simple as they want to make money.
Well, give me put some names under that freelance category.
Well, the first name that obviously comes to mind in Colorado would be Dudley Brown.
The guy who runs Rocky Mountain Gun Owners.
Right.
And wields a lot of fear down under that gold dome. It's amazing.
And I will give it, you have to hand it to Dudley. He's very politically savvy. He knows how to work the grassroots side of politics better than almost anybody on the right. I mean, he knows how to manipulate the caucuses and the central committee meetings and all of these things that a lot of politicos don't even see going on. They're disinterested in that.
They don't have the time for it because it is very minutia, going to caucuses.
That's right.
And that's where you get, a small group of people can have a huge impact.
Right. And so long before a lot of these candidates and people who get elected are even on the radar screens of politicos, let alone the general public, Dudley has been having people go door to door. He's been putting out flyers. He has been determining who is going to be the candidate.
But who is this guy? I mean, tell me the agenda here.
When I first heard about Dudley Brown, I thought he must be a great guy because he's unwaveringly pro-gun, pro-Second Amendment. How can that be a bad thing? Well, I'm not seeing the fruits of that. In fact, I think we're seeing quite the opposite, because this is someone who is far more interested, apparently, in having big problems and big challenges to our Second Amendment rights that he can then send out flyers and do a lot of media appearances saying we have this big problem, I'll solve it, send me money, and then actually sabotages solutions to those big problems.
Talk to me about this sabotaging, because I had the same feeling, which is, hey, as a gunny myself, anybody who's working in the same direction, we're all pushing in the same direction. I found that's not the case.
Right.
There are people, Dudley being the case, who are pushing to make sure we don't make advancements on gun rights.
Exactly, and this is what doesn't happen so much on the left side of the political spectrum, is this sabotage of the cause that we supposedly share. We see it on the right in guns, we see it on abortion, we see it on a number of other things. Dudley, for instance, will not compromise. He went to his people who answer to him. He got them elected. He took them under his wing when they were nobody. Absolutely nobody. Now that falls apart a lot of times because these people haven't been vetted. Jackson Bubis, a classic example in Colorado Springs.
Who is Jackson Bubis? She was, for those of us who don't know.
She was the candidate he chose to run against John Morse in the recall of the Senate president. The liberal Democratic Senate president. She turns out to be a pornographic novelist. She had not been vetted. Thankfully, the GOP in El Paso County was able to do a save on that just in the nick of time, so that she didn't move forward as the candidate. But that's just a classic example.
And the Senate the president was only recalled by 300 votes.
Right.
If Jacqueline Bubis got the nomination,
it would never have happened. And you would see John Morse on Rachel Maddow and other left-wing talk shows.
Michael
as
Bloomberg
a hero
would have taken him state to
day.
state on wings of eagles and flower buds as he walked through.
He would have risen through the ranks faster. So we see this sabotage. You see it on important issues on the right. Let's not win an incremental victory and say that incrementalism is evil. Well, imagine anything being done outside of incrementalism or compromise. Winning battles so you can win a war, that's how it works. These people will completely suspend that reality and tell you that they're holier than thou, that they're not going to be compromised.
And a lot of gun owners are susceptible to this because they're flag-waving hardcore constitutionalists.
Right.
And the fight I'm having right now is that we have an opportunity to expand the magazine limit to 30 rounds from 15, which almost erases the entire problem.
Almost 100%.
On the way to full repeal. I want to make sure.
And then you come back, as Reagan said, and for another bite at the apple after you have that victory.
And the only reason it's not happening is because of Dudley Brown. Now, and if his donors knew that Dudley Brown and Michael Bloomberg are both working towards the same goal of making sure this magazine ban that we have in Colorado stays exactly the way it is, I think they might be pissed.
What a gift to the left. I mean, honestly, what a gift to the anti-gun rights left. Imagine if they would give a similar gift to the right. Imagine if we had strong factions left of center who said, we will either allow 100% of abortion for any reason, or if we can't have that, then we will have no abortion.
Right.
We will allow no guns. We'll confiscate them all. If we can't have that, then it's a gun free for all. 100% tax rate or no taxes at all. Wouldn't there be people on the right who would think that's a great thing? You would send them money.
It's you know, Dudley Brown is to limited government people what the Green Party is to Republicans. You know, we get victories thanks to the Green Party, and Democrats get huge victories thanks to Dudley Brown. Am I overstating that?
No, that is correct. I think that's a good comparison, but I think that we have a much more intense situation on the right than you ever see on the left.
Wayne, thank you for always. We'll keep it up. Listen for me on KHOW Radio. Tell a friend about independence, and we'll see you next week.